shout out of the day, Miss Mackenzie. Okay, Miss Mackenzie, I love how you're just like always wanting to be like super close and wanting to show me everything, and I just think you get so excited about both myself and Mrs. Webb, and you're just like, sometimes you're talking like nonstop to us because you just love seeing us. That's kind of what the sense that I get. Oh my goodness, I love having you in class. You make me smile and you make me feel so loved. So thank you, Miss Mackenzie. Ooh, find out castles. What do you want to find out? Fun facts, amazing pictures, and quizzes. Ooh, this is gonna be jam-packed with information. Helmets. Wow, look at all those different kinds of helmets that they used to have. And they're armor plated. By the 1400s, a full suit or harness of plate armor could protect every part of a knight's body for each piece, and each piece had a name. Interesting. What is a castle? Rulers built castles between 1,100 and 500 years ago in Europe and parts of Asia. Their massive stone towers loomed over places from valleys to seashores. Castles were built for defense, but also home to many people. So it was a place of residence, imprisonment, royal or regional power, administration, and garrison. The soldiers inside the castle were called garrison. They were there to defend it from attack. A well-designed castle could be kept safe by quite a small garrison. Oh, so maybe that's like the bridge? I'm not sure. That's something new to me. Ooh, wooden castles. The Normans began building castles with timber in the 9th century BCE. This castle design is called motte and bailey. The first keepers or towers stood on top of a mound called a motte. Interesting. Below the motte was an open area called a bailey. The whole site was protected by fences and by ditches. Hold on. You're gonna hold on. Not right now. You're gonna have to wait. Stone castles. From the 11th century, wooden motte and bailey castles were replaced with stronger defenses built of stone. The mound was now always topped with a stone keep, a high tower that was hard to attack. Over the ages, more and more stone defenses were built around to keep. Wow. So here's the blacksmith furnace, the Tweed crane, carpenters. This is talking about building a castle. The Great Hall. The largest room of the castle was the Great Hall. Let me see if I can move over here so you can see it a little bit better. The largest room of the castle was called the Great Hall. It was the center of the household where meetings, war conferences, or sometimes trials for criminals took place. It was a reception hall for important guests and was where banquets and entertainments were held. See, this is the entertainment, the musicians, tapestry, wall hangings. Give a dog a bone. Favorite hounds might be treated to a scrap during the meal. Salt vessel. Interesting. High table. That's where royalty, nobles, or other important visitors dined. And then servants who took care of the food pantry and attended the Okay. A concentric castle. Over time, castle builders added more and more defenses. These made it harder for the enemy to swarm over walls, through walls, or dig under them. That's the inner bailey, it's called. Outer bailey. Castle defenses. Interesting. Portcullises. This heavy grind of wood and iron was used to seal off the gatehouse. It was lowered if the castle was under attack. Sometimes two portcullises were used together to trap the enemy in between. Battlements, drawbridges, murder holes. Holes in the ceiling of the gatehouse were used for dropping nasty things such as rocks on an enemy below. That's interesting. There were slits in the sides for arrows or spears. Moats. Water stopped the enemy from getting too close to the walls. Moats were large ditches filled with water and sometimes the contents of toilets. Oh my goodness, they even had sewage. Towers. They made for good lookout points. Besieged. Combat. Arrow loops, hoardings, belfry, reaching the walls, undermining the walls. Let's see. Besieged. The best way to capture a castle was to surround it with troops and then cut off its supplies of food and water. This was called a siege. Heavy weapons called siege enemies were used to attack the castle's walls and the people inside. Meet the expert. Libby MacIons is the trebuchet master at Warwick Castle in Warwick, UK. She tells us about what it takes to build a real-life war machine. Okay, so what exactly is a trebuchet? How big is a trebuchet? How do you know what a medieval trebuchet would have looked like or how it would have worked? How did you build the reconstructed one? What is your favorite part of your job? Do you have a favorite story from the trebuchet history? That's what it is. It looks like one of those that would like load up. You would like load up something and then it would fire. Dungeons. Many castles throughout history have served as prisons. With their thick walls and armed guards, any escape or rescue was difficult or impossible. People who defied the king or the church were thrown into damp underground dungeons full of rats and with little light or food. Prison castles. Feudal society, a monarch, a bishop, clergy, law and order, servants, knights, vassal lords, craft workers, and peasants. Lords and ladies. They would wear a headdress, tunics, belts and decorative buckles, keys of the castle, a pouch, leather shoes, woolen leggings, and long dresses. Working in a castle, a nurse, cook, butler, stitching, lady of the castle, and an arrowhead. Oh, interesting. So see how he's creating that arrow? He or she, I'm not sure. Okay. Peasant life. Life for poor people in medieval times was hard, especially for serfs, the poorest kind of peasant who had very few rights. Ordinary men and women had to work hard in the fields to produce food for the nobles in the castle as well as for themselves. In the 14th century, peasants across Europe rebelled against the nobles. Animals, harvesting, castle, windmill. Let's see. Oh, he's a chapman. And taxes. Animals. Animals played an important part in everyday castle life. Horses were used for riding into battle, as transport, and when hunting. The king and nobles hunted animals such as deer or wild boar. In the forest, oxen hauled heavy loads and plowed the fields. Oh, interesting. There was even beekeeping where they would get the honey. Falcons would hunt the other small animals. Pigeons. Pigeons were kept in huts called dovecotes and bred for eating. Wow. They were also trained to carry messages over long distances. Cows and oxen. Cattle were raised on the castle lands, providing meat, milk for making cheese or butter, and skin for making leather. Stags. The male red deer, or hart, was hunted by nobles for sport. Its meat, called venison, was shared amongst them, with higher-ranked people getting more. Dogs. Dogs were bred for hunting, herding animals, and guard duties. Small pet dogs were also popular. Horses. The best war horses were called destriers. Every day, riding horses were known as palfreys. Merchants used baggage horses called sumpters. Dressing a knight. Knights were soldiers who rode on horseback. From the thousands, they became valued as troops and also as high-ranking members of society. They fought in suits of armor. At first, this was mail, a mesh made from interlinking iron rings. By the 1400s, the whole body was covered in close-fitting plates of steel. So interesting. That's kind of like Iron Man in the very, very, very old days. Name your weapon. There's a poleaxe, halberd, dagger, mace, longbow, and sword. Tournaments. The medieval tournament was a display of riding and fighting skills. Knights competed to be the winners. The first tournaments were held around the time stone castles began to build in the 11th century. By the 1500s, they had become grand and colorful spectacles. Clashes of arms. Jousting. They used to ride at each other and use these super long sticks to try and hit the other one off the horse. Heraldic symbols. By the end of the Middle Ages, tournaments were places to show off fancy armor, plumed helmets, and flags. Heraldic symbols were a noble family's favorite image of power, such as dragons and castles. They appeared on surcoats, shields, and on the horses' coverings. Ladies' favor. A lady's favor might agree for a particular knight to fight as a champion of her honor, wearing her scarf or ribbon in the joust. This was part of the knight's code of honor, known as chivalry. Food and feasts.